The summer of 2002 was heavy with cicada song in the small town of Willow Creek, Indiana, where Sarah Bennett lived in a yellow house with peeling paint. At 12, Sarah was all elbows and curiosity, her brown hair always escaping its braid, her nose buried in library books about stars and cells. The house smelled of her mom Laura's lavender soap and fresh-baked bread, and every night, Laura would sit on Sarah's bed, her warm voice spinning stories about artists and dreamers. "You're gonna do big things, Sarah girl," Laura would say, tucking a strand of hair behind Sarah's ear. "Just keep asking why." But that summer, Laura changed. Her hands, once steady with a paintbrush, started to shake. Her words slurred, like she was reaching for them through fog. Sarah noticed the way her mom's smile faltered, the way she'd pause mid-sentence, staring at nothing. By fall, Laura was in Willow Creek General, a grey building that smelled of bleach and despair. The doctors called it a rare neurological disease, something with a name Sarah couldn't pronounce, like a curse from one of her mom's old fairy tales. "No cure," they said, their voices flat. "We can make her comfortable." Sarah hated that word, comfortable. It didn't stop her mom from forgetting how to hold a spoon or losing the names of her favorite flowers. Sarah spent every day after school at the hospital, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, her backpack heavy with homework she barely touched. She'd sit by Laura's bed, holding her hand, willing her to fight. "You're tougher than this, Mom," she'd whisper, her voice cracking. "You have to be." Laura's room was a cage of beeping monitors and stiff white sheets. Sarah taped drawings to the walls, bright sketches of sunflowers and starry skies, things her mom used to love. Sometimes, Laura's eyes would flicker with recognition, and she'd squeeze Sarah's hand, a ghost of her old warmth. Other times, she stared past her, lost in a place Sarah couldn't reach. The doctors were kind but helpless, their answers always the same: "We're doing all we can." One night, Sarah overheard them in the hallway, their voices low. "She's got weeks, maybe days," one said. "No treatments ever worked for this." Sarah pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to shake them until they found a way to save her mom. Instead, she ran back to Laura's room, tears burning her eyes. Laura was awake, her face pale against the pillow. "Sarah girl," she rasped, her voice a fragile thread. Don't be scared." "I'm not," Sarah lied, climbing onto the bed. She curled up beside her mom, the locket Laura always wore, a silver oval with a photo of them inside, pressing against her cheek. "You're gonna get better. You have to." Laura's hand trembled as she touched Sarah's face. "You're my brave girl. Promise me. Keep asking why. No matter what." Sarah nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She didn't know then that it was their last real talk. 3 days later, Laura slipped away, her breathing slowing until the monitors went silent. Sarah sat frozen, holding her mom's hand, the locket clutched in her fist. The room felt too big, too empty, like the world had cracked open. The funeral was a blur of casseroles and pitying looks. Sarah stood by the grave, Laura's locket now around her own neck, its weight both comfort and ache. She was alone now, her dad long gone, no siblings, no close relatives. A social worker talked about foster care, but Sarah barely listened. Her mind was on the hospital, on the doctors who'd given up. "I'll fix it," she whispered to the gravestone, her voice fierce. "I'll be a doctor, Mom. I'll find a way to stop this." Life after Laura was a patchwork of foster homes and library corners. Sarah threw herself into school, her grief a fire that burned through math tests and science fairs. She'd sit up late, the locket open in her lap, studying biology textbooks until her eyes blurred. Her foster parents were kind but distant, their houses never home. Kids at school called her the quiet one, but Sarah didn't care. She had a promise to keep. By 16, she was top of her class, her desk piled with scholarship applications. Teachers noticed her drive, slipping her extra books or lab time. One, Ms. Harper, a biology teacher with a sharp wit, caught Sarah reading about neurological diseases during lunch. "You're chasing something big, aren't you?" Ms. Harper said, her eyes kind. Sarah nodded, her fingers brushing the locket. "My mom, she died from something nobody could fix. I'm gonna change that." Ms. Harper didn't push, just handed her a college pamphlet for pre-med. Then you better start here. Sarah took it, her heart pounding. The path was long, high school, college, medical school, years of work, but she saw it clearly, like a map to the stars her mom used to love. She'd be a doctor, not just any doctor, but one who fought for the hopeless cases, the ones others gave up on. She'd make sure no kid ever sat by a bed like she had, watching someone they loved fade away. As she walked home that day, the Indiana sky stretched wide above her, the cicadas quieter now, the air cool with fall. Sarah opened the locket, her mom's face smiling back at her. "I'm starting, Mom," she said, her voice steady. "I'm gonna keep asking why." She didn't know it yet, but that promise would carry her through years of struggle, to a hospital in Chicago, to a patient who'd change her life, and to a legacy bigger than she'd ever dreamed. The lecture hall at Indiana State University smelled of chalk dust and coffee, its rows of desks filled with freshmen chattering about frat parties and football games. Sarah Bennett, 18 and wiry, sat in the back, her second-hand backpack stuffed with textbooks. Her fingers brushed the locket around her neck, the silver worn smooth from years of touch. It was 2008, and she'd clawed her way here on a full scholarship, leaving Willow Creek's quiet streets for a chance at her promise, to become a doctor and fight the disease that stole her mom. But college wasn't the golden ticket she'd imagined. It was a grind, and Sarah was already tired. Her days were a blur of classes, library marathons, and night shifts at a diner, where she slung burgers to cover rent. Her foster parents had faded into polite Christmas cards, and her dorm room, a cramped space with a lumpy bed, was more a place to crash than a home. She didn't fit in with her peers, who seemed to glide through life with trust funds and easy laughs. Sarah was the girl with ink-stained fingers and a dog-eared biology book, always rushing, always alone. But every time she wanted to quit, she'd open her locket, see her mom's face, and hear her voice, keep asking why. Her first year was brutal. Organic chemistry felt like a foreign language, and her grades wobbled. During a late-night study session, she met Tom, a pre-med student with a quick smile and a knack for explaining molecular bonds. He'd tease her about her coffee addiction, and for a while, they were a team, quizzing each other, sharing cheap pizza, stealing kisses in the library stacks. Sarah liked him, maybe even loved him, but when he talked about summer road trips or med school in California, she pulled back. Her dream was bigger than dates or daydreams. It was her mom's grave, her promise, her fight. By her junior year, Sarah found her stride. She aced her exams, joined a research lab, and caught the eye of Dr. Ellen Carter, a neurology professor with a reputation for being tough as nails. Ellen was in her 50s, her grey hair cropped short, her office a mess of journals and coffee mugs. One day, she called Sarah in after a seminar on rare diseases. "You're not just here for a degree, are you?" Ellen said, her eyes sharp. "What's driving you?" Sarah hesitated, her thumb rubbing the locket. "My mom died when I was 12. A neurological disease. No cure. I want to fix that." Ellen leaned back, her face softening. "I lost my brother to ALS. It's why I'm here, too. You've got fire, Sarah, but fire burns out if you're not careful. Let me help you focus it." Ellen became Sarah's guide, pushing her to specialize in neurology. She gave her late-night lab access, recommended conferences, and shared stories of her own failures, grants denied, trials that flopped. "Science isn't just brains," Ellen said. "It's heart, too. Don't forget that." Sarah soaked it up, her notebooks filled with ideas about protein misfolding and immune responses, the puzzle pieces of her mom's disease. But the work took its toll. Sarah barely slept, her diet a mix of granola bars and diner leftovers. Tom tried to keep up, but by senior year, he couldn't. "You're married to this, Sarah," he said one night, his voice sharp. "There's no room for us." She didn't argue. When he left for med school in Boston, she stayed behind, her heart aching but her path clear. The locket felt heavier those days, a reminder of what she'd given up. Her big break came at 22, when she published a paper on her mom's disease in a small journal. It wasn't a cure, just a theory about targeting misfolded proteins, but it got her noticed. Medical schools sent letters, and Sarah chose the University of Chicago, a place with a top neurology program and a hospital where she could see patients, not just petri dishes. The city was loud, overwhelming, nothing like Willow Creek's quiet fields, but Sarah loved its pulse. She moved into a tiny apartment, its walls bare except for a photo of her and her mom, and threw herself into med school. Chicago was a different beast. The workload crushed her, endless rotations, exams, and research deadlines. Her classmates were brilliant, some with parents who were doctors, their futures cushioned by connections. Sarah was still the scholarship kid, working weekends as a lab tech, her locket her only constant. Ellen, now a mentor from afar, sent emails with advice. Pace yourself. You're not saving the world today. But Sarah couldn't slow down. Every patient with a tremor or a stutter reminded her of her mom, of time running out. She stumbled often. A patient died during her first rotation, a woman with a brain tumor, and Sarah cried in the stairwell, questioning everything. Ellen called her that night. You can't save them all, she said. But you fight for the ones you can. That's enough. Sarah clung to that, pushing through sleepless nights and failed experiments. She presented at conferences, her voice shaky but sure, and co-authored a study on immunotherapy, a spark of hope for untreatable diseases. By 28, Sarah graduated, her white coat crisp, her name embroidered, Dr. Sarah Bennett, neurologist. She landed a residency at Chicago General, a sprawling hospital where the air buzzed with urgency. On her last day in Indiana, she drove to Willow Creek, the locket warm against her chest. The cemetery was quiet, the grass overgrown around her mom's stone. Sarah knelt, tracing the engraved name, Laura Bennett. I did it, Mom, she said, her voice steady. I'm a doctor. But I'm not done. I'm gonna find a way to stop it, for you, for everyone. She opened the locket, her mom's smile soft in the fading light. The promise she'd made at 12 wasn't just a kid's dream anymore. It was real, and she was ready to fight. Chicago General was waiting, its halls a maze of hope and heartbreak. Sarah didn't know it yet, but a patient was coming, a man whose fight would test her, change her, and show her what her promise could become. Chicago General Hospital was a beast of glass and steel, its halls alive with the clatter of carts and the murmur of urgent voices. In the spring of 2025, Sarah Bennett, now 30, navigated its chaos with a quiet confidence, her white coat a second skin. Her residency in neurology kept her on her toes, long shifts, endless charts, patients who needed more than medicine could give. She loved it, even on the bad days, because every case brought her closer to her promise, to stop the disease that took her mom. The locket around her neck, etched with her mother's photo, was a constant reminder, its weight grounding her through the grind. It was a Tuesday morning when Sarah met James Whitaker. She was on rounds, her tablet glowing with patient updates, when Dr. Harmon, the head neurologist, flagged her down. Harmon was a tall man with a clipped voice and a habit of dismissing anything that didn't fit his playbook. Bennett, take a look at room 512, he said, barely glancing up from his coffee. New admit. 55, male. Neurological symptoms. Tremors. Memory lapses. Sounds like a rare one. Chart's a mess, so figure it out. Sarah nodded, used to Harmon's gruff handoffs. She headed to room 512, her sneakers silent on the polished floor. The room was dim, the blinds half drawn, and James Whitaker sat upright in bed, his grey hair thinning, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He looked older than 55, his face lined with worry, but his eyes were sharp, sizing her up as she entered. Mr. Whitaker, I'm Dr. Sarah Bennett, she said, offering a small smile. Mind if I ask you a few questions? He nodded, his voice low. Go ahead, doctor. She ran through the basics. When the tremors started, what he remembered, how he felt. James answered carefully, his words measured. The shaking in his hands had begun 6 months ago, subtle at first, then worse. He'd forget names, dates, even where he parked his car. Last week, he'd blanked on his own address, standing in his driveway like a stranger. I'm not one to complain, he said, but it's scaring me. Sarah's pen paused over her tablet. His symptoms were a checklist from her nightmares: tremors, memory loss, confusion. She'd seen them before, not in a chart, but in her mom's fading smile, her unsteady hands. Her heart thudded as she pulled up James's chart. The preliminary diagnosis stared back at her: suspected rare proteinopathy, likely variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob-like syndrome. The same disease that killed Laura, untreatable then, barely understood now. She kept her face neutral, but her fingers tightened around the locket under her scrubs. "We'll run some tests," she said, her voice steady. "Blood work, an MRI, maybe a spinal tap. We'll figure out what's going on." James nodded, but his eyes held hers. "You don't sugarcoat, do you?" "Not really," she said, managing a half-smile. "But I'm in your corner, okay?" He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good to know." The tests confirmed her fears. By afternoon, the results were in. James had the same rare, aggressive disease her mom had. Sarah sat in the residence lounge, the chart open on her lap, her coffee untouched. She'd spent years studying this disease, writing papers, chasing theories, but seeing it in James, his quiet fear, his trembling hands, was like stepping back into her 12-year-old self, helpless by her mom's bed. She wanted to run, to hide from the weight of it, but the locket pressed against her chest, a silent push. Keep asking why. She visited James that evening, finding him staring out the window at Chicago's skyline. "Got a minute?" she asked, pulling up a chair. "For you, sure," he said, his voice softer now. He told her bits of his life: widowed 5 years ago, no kids, a career he didn't name but hinted was demanding. "I'm used to being alone," he said. "But this, it's different." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "My mom had what you have. I was a kid. Watching her slip away. It's why I'm here." James's eyes met hers, a flicker of understanding. "That's a heavy load for a kid to carry." "Yeah," she said, her fingers brushing the locket. "But it's mine." They talked a little longer, about small things, Chicago winters, his love for jazz. Sarah left his room with a fire in her chest. James wasn't just a patient. He was her chance to rewrite her mom's story, to fight where others had given up. But the fight wouldn't be easy. The next day, Sarah met with Dr. Harmon in his office, a sterile space with awards lining the walls. She laid out her case. James's diagnosis wasn't a death sentence. New research, immunotherapy, gene therapy, protein inhibitors, showed promise. "We could try a combined approach," she said, sliding a stack of studies across his desk. "It's experimental, but there's data. I think we can slow it down, maybe reverse it." Harmon barely glanced at the papers. "Bennett, this is a long shot. The hospital's budget isn't a playground for your theories. Whitaker's case is terminal. We focus on comfort, not miracles." Sarah's jaw tightened. "He's not terminal yet. There's a chance." "There's always a chance," Harmon cut in, his voice sharp. "But we deal in realities. Palliative care is the protocol. Stick to it." She left his office, her hands clenched, the locket burning against her skin. Harmon was wrong. She'd read the studies, seen the trials. Small, yes, but real. She wasn't 12 anymore, begging doctors for answers. She was a doctor, and she had answers, or at least the start of them. That night, Sarah sat in her apartment, her laptop glowing with research papers. She emailed Dr. Ellen Carter, her old mentor, attaching her notes. "I've got a patient with mom's disease," she wrote. "I can't let him go without a fight. Help me." Ellen's reply came fast. "You're on the right track, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. I'm sending you a contact at NIH. Keep pushing." Sarah leaned back, her eyes on the photo of her and her mom, taped to the wall. She thought of James, alone in room 512, his hands shaking like her mom's had. She thought of Willow Creek, of a promise made by a grave. Harmon could keep his protocols. She'd find a way to save James, not because it was easy, but because it was right. She opened a new document, typing the outline of a treatment plan. It was risky, untested, a gamble against time. But Sarah was all in. For James, for her mom, for the kid she used to be, she'd fight until the end. Sarah Bennett's apartment had become a war room, its small table buried under research papers, coffee mugs, and a laptop that never slept. It was late summer 2025, and Chicago's heat clung to the city, but Sarah barely noticed. Her world was James Whitaker's chart, the rare disease eating at his brain, and the promise she'd made to her mom 16 years ago. The locket around her neck felt heavier each day, a tether to her purpose as she fought to find a treatment that could save James. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mom's trembling hands, James's fading clarity, and knew she couldn't stop. Her plan was ambitious, a combination of immunotherapy to boost James's system and a new drug targeting the misfolded proteins driving his disease. She'd found scraps of hope in recent studies, small trials in Europe, a lab in Boston with early success, but nothing proven, nothing approved. It was a long shot, and Dr. Harmon's words haunted her. We deal in realities, not miracles. Sarah didn't want a miracle. She wanted science, hard won and precise, and she was ready to bleed for it. She'd teamed up with Dr. Priya Shah, a young researcher in Chicago General's lab, whose quick mind and dry humor kept Sarah sane. Priya was barely 30, her dark hair always in a messy bun, her desk a chaos of energy drink cans. They'd met at a conference, bonding over a shared hatred of hospital bureaucracy, and now they were partners in this fight. "You're crazy, you know," Priya said one night, hunched over a microscope. "This protocol's like building a rocket from scratch." "Then we're astronauts," Sarah shot back, her eyes on her laptop. "James doesn't have time for us to play it safe." Their first hurdle was data. Sarah spent nights combing journals, emailing researchers from London to Tokyo, begging for unpublished results. Ellen Carter's contact at the knee sent a dataset on protein inhibitors, but it was incomplete, a puzzle with missing pieces. Sarah and Priya ran simulations, tweaking dosages, modeling outcomes. Half their trials failed, cells died, proteins clumped, results flatlined. Sarah's notebook filled with crossed-out ideas, her frustration spilling over. "We're so close," she muttered, slamming her pen down. "Why isn't it working?" Priya pushed a coffee toward her. "Because science is a jerk. Take a breath, Sarah. We'll crack it." But time was slipping. James was worsening, his tremors now constant, his speech slurring like Sarah's mom's had. During rounds, Sarah found him struggling to hold a cup, his face tight with effort. "It's getting harder," he admitted, his voice low. "But I trust you, Dr. Bennett. You're not giving up, are you?" Sarah's throat tightened, her fingers brushing the locket. "Not a chance, James. We're fighting this together." His trust fueled her, but the hospital was another battle. Dr. Harmon blocked her at every turn, refusing to allocate lab resources for unproven experiments. Sarah needed funding, equipment, and approval for a human trial, but Harmon's answer was always no. "You're wasting time," he told her, his office door half closed. "Focus on patients we can actually help." Sarah's temper flared. "James is a patient. He's not a write-off." Harmon's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, Bennett. This isn't personal." But it was personal. It was her mom's face, James's fear, the promise she'd carried since she was 12. Sarah knew she had to go over Harmon's head. She spent a week crafting a proposal, her data sharp, her arguments airtight. With Priya's help, she pitched to the hospital board, a room of suits and skeptical faces. She stood at the podium, her voice steady, laying out the science, immunotherapy's potential, the drug's mechanism, the lives it could save. "This isn't just about James Whitaker," she said, her locket warm against her chest. "It's about every patient we've lost to this disease. We have a chance to change that." Harmon sat in the back, arms crossed, his silence loud. The board was quiet, their questions brutal, cost estimates, success rates, liability. Sarah answered each one, her research a shield. Then, a surprise, James, wheeled in by a nurse, his voice weak but clear. "I believe in Dr. Bennett," he said, his eyes on the board. "She's given me hope when no one else did. Let her try." The room shifted. Sarah's heart pounded, her gratitude for James overwhelming. The board approved a small trial, 1 patient, limited funds. It was a lifeline, but it came with a warning: failure could end her career. Sarah threw herself into action. She and Priya finalized the protocol, mixing the drug in the lab, calibrating doses. The hospital's pharmacy was a fortress of red tape, but Sarah charmed the techs, sneaking in late to double-check vials. She visited James daily, explaining the risks, side effects, no guarantees. He signed the consent form, his hand shaking but his smile firm. "You're my shot, Doc," he said. "Let's take it." The trial began in September, a tense dance of fours and monitors. Sarah oversaw every step, her eyes on James's vitals, her notebook tracking every change. Priya ran lab tests, her optimism a lifeline when Sarah's doubt crept in. For 2 weeks, there was nothing, no improvement, just James's steady decline. Sarah barely ate, her apartment a mess of takeout boxes and unopened mail. Ellen called, her voice firm. "You're killing yourself, Sarah. You can't save him if you're falling apart." "I'm fine," Sarah lied, her fingers clutching the locket. But she wasn't. She saw her mom in every tremor, every blank stare. Failure wasn't just losing James, it was losing her promise. Then, a spark. On day 15, James's tremors eased, his grip stronger. He named the nurse, Clara, without pausing, a small victory that made Sarah's heart leap. Priya's tests showed lower protein levels, the disease's grip loosening. Sarah grinned, hugging Priya in the lab, their laughter echoing. "We're doing it," she said, her voice shaky. "It's working." But the fight wasn't over. A week later, James had a seizure, his body convulsing in room 512. Sarah rushed in, barking orders, anticonvulsants, oxygen, stabilize him. She held his hand as the team worked, her voice steady. "You're tougher than this, James. Stay with me." The seizure stopped, but it was a warning, the treatment was a tightrope, and they were far from safe. Sarah adjusted the protocol, lowering the drug dose, her mind racing. Priya stayed up with her, recalculating risks, their whiteboard a mess of equations. Harmon hovered, his skepticism a shadow. "One setback, and this trial's done," he warned. Sarah didn't back down. She visited James, now awake but weak, his jazz records playing softly. "We hit a bump," she said, sitting by his bed. "But we're not stopping. You with me?" James nodded, his voice hoarse. "All the way, document." Sarah left his room, her locket warm against her skin. The trial was a gamble, the stakes higher than ever. But for the first time, she saw a path, not just for James, but for every patient like her mom. She'd fight for it, no matter the cost, because that's what her promise demanded. October 2025 brought a chill to Chicago, the hospital's windows streaked with rain, but inside room 512, a quiet miracle was unfolding. Sarah Bennett stood by James Whitaker's bed, her tablet glowing with test results that made her heart race. After months of grueling work, countless setbacks, and a seizure that nearly ended it all, James was getting better. His tremors were gone, his speech clear, his memory sharp enough to joke about the hospital's terrible coffee. The rare disease that had once seemed unstoppable was retreating, its protein markers plummeting in his latest scans. Sarah's experimental treatment, immunotherapy paired with a protein inhibitor, was working, and she could hardly believe it. She'd spent the last week glued to James's side, checking vitals, tweaking doses, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. Dr. Priya Shah, her partner in the lab, ran endless tests, her excitement spilling over in late-night texts, protein levels down 60%. "We're rewriting the book." Even Dr. Harmon, the skeptic who tried to shut them down, couldn't argue with the data. He'd stopped by the lab, his arms crossed, and muttered, "Good work, Bennett," before walking away. It wasn't an apology, but Sarah didn't care. James was walking proof she'd been right to fight. Today, James sat up in bed, a jazz record spinning softly on his portable player. He wore a hospital gown but looked more like himself, color in his cheeks, a spark in his eyes. Sarah flipped through his chart, her locket warm against her chest. "You're a rock star, James," she said, grinning. "Your scans are the best we've seen. We're not out of the woods, but you're kicking this thing's butt." James chuckled, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "I had a good coach, document. You didn't just save my life, You gave me a reason to keep going." Sarah's throat tightened. She thought of her mom, of the hospital room in Willow Creek where no one had fought hard enough. "You did the hard part," she said, her voice soft. "I just brought the playbook." They talked for a while, James sharing stories of his late wife, how she'd loved jazz and Chicago's skyline. Sarah listened, her heart full. He wasn't just a patient anymore, he was a friend, a reminder of why she'd chosen this path. As she left his room, she caught her reflection in the window, her locket glinting. For the first time in years, she felt like she'd kept her promise to her mom, at least for one person. The news spread fast. By the next week, Sarah's trial was the talk of Chicago General. Colleagues stopped her in the halls, asking for details. A medical journal requested a paper, and the knee called, wanting to fund a larger study. Sarah was stunned, her small apartment now a mess of interview requests and congratulatory emails. Priya threw her a mini party in the lab, cupcakes and soda, their whiteboard still scribbled with equations. "You're a legend, Sarah," Priya said, raising a plastic cup. "To changing the game." Sarah laughed, but the attention felt strange. She hadn't done this for fame. She'd done it for James, for her mom, for the kid who'd promised to fix what no one else could. Still, the hospital's mood shifted. Nurses smiled more, Harmon stayed out of her way, and patients whispered her name like a talisman. A month later, James was cleared for discharge. Sarah met him in his room, where he packed a small duffel, his jazz records tucked carefully inside. He moved slowly but steadily, no wheelchair needed. "Got a surprise for you," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Meet me in the hospital cafeteria tomorrow, noon. Don't be late." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You're not smuggling me bad coffee, are you?" He laughed, shaking his head. "Better than that. Document trust me." The next day, Sarah walked into the cafeteria, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. James sat at a corner table, dressed in a sharp blazer, looking more like a CEO than a patient. He waved her over, a manila envelope in front of him. Sarah sat, curious, her locket catching the light. "Sarah," James began, his voice serious, "I haven't been fully honest with you. I didn't want special treatment, so I kept this quiet. I'm James Whitaker, chairman of Whitaker Pharmaceuticals. Been running it for 20 years. Sarah's jaw dropped. Whitaker Pharmaceuticals was a giant. Drugs, research, hospitals. She'd seen their logo on half the equipment in the lab. "You're what?" He smiled, pushing the envelope toward her. "You saved my life, Sarah. Not just with medicine, but with heart. You believed in me when no one else did. I want to thank you properly." She opened the envelope, her hands trembling. Inside was a check, 7 figures, more money than she'd ever imagined, and a proposal for a new hospital, the Laura Bennett Center for Rare Diseases, fully funded by his company. "I want you to run it," James said. "A place for patients like me, like your mom. You're the one to make it happen." Sarah stared at the papers, her vision blurring. "James, I can't take this. It's too much." "It's not enough," he said firmly. "You gave me my life back. This is how I give back to you, and to every patient who needs you." She shook her head, overwhelmed. The money was staggering, but the hospital, named for her mom, was a dream she hadn't dared to dream. She thought of Willow Creek, of her mom's grave, of the promise she'd made at 12. "Why me?" she'll ask, her voice breaking. "Because you're the real deal," James said. "You fight for people, not headlines. Say yes, Sarah. Do it for Laura." Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers clutching the locket. She saw her mom's smile, heard her voice. Keep asking why. This wasn't just a gift, it was a chance to save countless lives, to make her mom's loss mean something. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "I'm in." James grinned, shaking her hand. "That's my document." That night, Sarah drove to Willow Creek, the locket warm against her chest. The cemetery was quiet, the stars bright above her mom's grave. She knelt, the envelope in her lap, and let the tears come. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "Not just for James, but for everyone. Your name's gonna light the way." She stayed until dawn, the proposal beside her, her heart full. James's gift was more than money. It was a future, a chance to rewrite the story of loss she'd carried for so long. Sarah wasn't done fighting, but now, she wouldn't fight alone. The Laura Bennett Center for Rare Diseases stood on Chicago's west side, its glass facade gleaming under the spring sun of 2026. Sarah Bennett, now 31, walked its halls, her white coat swapped for a blazer, her locket still a quiet weight around her neck. A year ago, she'd been a resident fighting for one patient. Now, she was the director of a hospital built on James Whitaker's gratitude and her mother's memory. The center was more than a building. It was a promise kept, a place where patients like her mom could find hope. But for Sarah, it was also a mirror, reflecting everything she'd fought for and everything she'd learned. The center buzzed with life. Researchers in white coats darted between labs, nurses wheeled patients to therapy rooms, and families sat in sunlit waiting areas, their faces softer than in most hospitals. Sarah had designed it that way, open, warm, a far cry from the sterile wards of her childhood. She'd hired Dr. Priya Shah as head of research, her friend's sharp mind now leading trials for diseases once deemed untreatable. The center's mission was simple but bold: tackle the rarest illnesses with cutting-edge science and unrelenting care. Every room, every chart, carried the echo of Sarah's mom, "Keep asking why." Running the center was a whirlwind. Sarah's days were packed, meeting donors, reviewing trials, mentoring young doctors. She'd expected the work to be hard, but not the weight of leadership. Every decision, from budgets to patient care, landed on her desk. Some nights, she'd sit in her office, the city skyline twinkling outside, and wonder if she was enough. The locket helped, its photo of her mom a reminder of why she'd started. So did James, who visited monthly, his health stable, his jazz records now a fixture in the center's lounge. "You're doing it, Doc," he'd say, his grin wide. Laura would be proud. One morning, Sarah met a new patient, Lily, a 9-year-old girl with a diagnosis that stopped her cold, the same rare disease that had taken her mom and nearly killed James. Lily was small, her dark eyes wide with fear, her parents clutching her hands in the exam room. Sarah knelt beside her, her voice gentle. "Hey, Lily, I'm Dr. Sarah. We're gonna figure this out together, okay?" Lily nodded, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Will I be like my grandma?" She forgot everything. Sarah's heart ached, memories of her mom flooding back. She thought of Willow Creek, of her own childhood terror. "Not if I can help it," she said, squeezing Lily's hand. "We've got new tricks up our sleeves. You're a fighter, right?" Lily managed a small smile, and Sarah felt her resolve harden. She assigned Lily to Priya's team, using the same protocol that saved James, now refined with a year's data. Every night, Sarah checked Lily's chart, her locket warm against her chest. This wasn't just medicine, it was personal, a chance to spare another family the pain she'd carried. The center's impact grew fast. Patients came from across the country, drawn by stories of Sarah's breakthrough. A boy with a rare seizure disorder walked again. A woman with a genetic condition spoke her first words in years. The NIH funded a second trial, and Sarah's name appeared in journals, her face on news segments. She hated the spotlight, but Priya teased her into it. "You're the face of hope, Sarah," she'd say, tossing her a coffee. "Own it." Sarah's life was changing, too. She'd always been a loner, her heart tethered to her mom's memory, but the center forced her to open up. She laughed with nurses over bad cafeteria food, mentored residents with the same fire Ellen had given her. One day, Tom, the med school boyfriend she'd pushed away, walked into her office, now a pediatrician at a nearby clinic. "Heard you're saving the world," he said, his smile familiar. "Got time for an old friend?" Sarah hesitated, her old fears creeping in. But the locket felt lighter now, her mom's voice softer, urging her to live. She nodded, and over coffee, they talked, not about the past, but about now, about kids and medicine and Chicago's brutal winters. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a start, a crack in the wall she'd built around herself. The center's ribbon cutting was the real turning point. On a crisp April day, Sarah stood on a stage outside the hospital, a crowd of donors, staff, and patients before her. James was there, his blazer sharp, his applause loud. Lily sat in the front row, her stuffed rabbit in her lap, her latest scans clear. Sarah gripped the podium, her locket glinting in the sun, and spoke from the heart. "This place is for my mom, Laura Bennett," she said, her voice steady. "She taught me to ask why, to never stop searching for answers. She didn't live to see a cure, but every patient here carries her light. This hospital isn't just about science, it's about heart, about fighting for people when the odds are against them. That's what we do, and that's what we'll keep doing." The crowd cheered, and Sarah cut the ribbon, her eyes wet. As confetti fell, she saw her mom's smile in her mind, heard her voice. "You did it, Sarah girl." The Laura Bennett Center was more than a building. It was a legacy, a testament to what knowledge and kindness could do. Later, Sarah walked the halls, her blazer swapped back for scrubs. She stopped by Lily's room, where the girl was drawing stars with her mom. "Dr. Sarah." Lily called, holding up her paper. "Look, it's us, in the sky." Sarah laughed, taping the drawing to the wall. "You're a star, Lily. Keep shining." As she left, Sarah paused in the lobby, where a plaque read, "Laura Bennett Center, dedicated to hope." She touched her locket, her heart full. She'd learned something through all this, not just how to fight a disease, but how to live. Knowledge was her weapon, but kindness was her strength. Her mom's death had broken her, but it had also built her, leading her to James, to Lily, to this place where hope wasn't just a word. Sarah stepped outside, the Chicago skyline glowing against the dusk. There'd be more patients, more battles, more nights when doubt crept in. But she was ready, locket and all, to keep asking why, not just for answers, but for the people who needed her most.